What happens when a talk show host who believes she's the sharpest mind in every room decides to test a woman who built her entire career smiling through judgment, mockery, and condescension? What happens when polished arrogance meets decades of quiet resilience wrapped in southern warmth? What you're about to witness isn't just an interview. It's a slow-motion collision. And no one in that studio realized who was about to walk away changed forever. The morning air inside the View studio felt different before the cameras ever rolled. There was the usual hum of production, headsets crackling softly, stage lights warming the polished table, assistants moving with practiced efficiency, but underneath it all was a subtle tension that hadn't been there before. Not nerves. Not excitement. Something closer to anticipation. The kind that creeps in when a guest arrives who doesn't quite fit the mold. Leanne Morgan wasn't Hollywood. She didn't glide in with an entourage or demand silence when she walked. She didn't check her phone obsessively or ask where the camera would catch her best angle. Instead, she arrived with a laugh already on her lips, hugging the security guard like she'd known him for years, stopping mid-stride to compliment a makeup artist's earrings, asking a young production assistant where she got her shoes. "Those are precious," Leanne said, her Tennessee accent soft and musical. "My daughter would wear those till the backs fell off." The assistant flushed, smiling wide, surprised to be noticed at all. Leanne lingered. Asked questions. Listened to the answers. That was her way. For nearly 30 years, she'd learned something most performers never did, that the real audience wasn't just the people in the seats. It was everyone watching how you treated people when you thought no one important was looking. The studio doors opened, and the lights inside burned warm and bright. The famous table sat center stage, polished to a shine that reflected years of conversations, arguments, applause, and carefully controlled chaos. The audience filtered in, their chatter swelling into a low roar before settling into an expectant hush. Leanne stepped onto the stage and paused, just for a second. Not out of fear. Out of gratitude. "This is wild," she murmured to herself. "Mama's gonna lose her mind." She took her seat, smoothing her jacket, posture relaxed but alert. She greeted each host with genuine enthusiasm, her smile easy, unforced. "Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be here," she said, laughing softly. "I've been watching this show since my kids were in diapers. Now I'm sittin' at this table. My mama is not gonna believe this." The audience responded immediately. Warm laughter rippled through the room, not the sharp kind that came on cue, but the kind that rose naturally when someone felt real. Whoopi Goldberg smiled, genuinely this time. "Our next guest," Whoopi began, voice rich and steady, "has taken the comedy world by storm. Her Netflix special broke records. Her tours sell out in minutes. She's been called one of the funniest women in America. Please welcome Leanne Morgan." The applause hit harder now. Louder. Longer. Leanne waved, eyes scanning the crowd, taking it all in like a woman who knew exactly how rare moments like this were. "Y'all are too sweet," she said. "I feel like I'm at a family reunion, except nobody's asked me why I'm still single yet." She paused, then laughed. "Oh wait. I'm married. 33 years. Some days I forget his name. I just call him, hey, and hope for the best." The audience melted. This was Leanne Morgan at her most dangerous, disarming, relatable, laughing at herself before anyone else could try. The early part of the interview flowed easily. Sarah Haynes asked about Leanne's journey, and Leanne told it the way she always had, turning decades of struggle into something that felt light without ever diminishing its weight. She talked about raising 3 kids. About performing in church basements and Rotary Club luncheons while other comedians chased late-night spots. About telling jokes to half-empty rooms and learning how to win over people who hadn't come there to laugh. "I always tell folks," Leanne said, leaning forward slightly, hands folded, "I'm proof it's never too late. I was doing comedy in church basements while other people were on TV. But those church ladies. They taught me everything. Because if you can make a Baptist woman laugh about menopause, you can make anybody laugh about anything. Even Whoopi nodded, impressed. But Joy Behar had been quiet. Too quiet. She sat back in her chair, lips curled into a familiar smirk, eyes narrowed, not with curiosity, but with calculation. She'd seen guests like this before. People the audience loved. People who didn't play by the expected rules. And Joy had built a career on puncturing that kind of charm. She leaned forward at last. So, Leanne, Joy began, voice smooth but edged with something sharp, your comedy is very regional, isn't it? The temperature in the room shifted. It's all Walmart and casseroles and small-town life, Joy continued. Don't you think that's limiting? I mean, real comedy is supposed to challenge people. What you do feels more like comfort food humor, for people who don't really want to be challenged. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. The audience shifted in their seats. A few nervous laughs fluttered and died quickly. Even the studio lights seemed harsher now, less forgiving. Leanne didn't flinch. Her smile didn't fade. Didn't tighten. Didn't waver. Well, Joy, she said gently, I appreciate you asking that. Her voice was warm. Calm. Almost sweet. My mama used to say some people are so smart, they educate themselves right out of common sense. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think about it every time someone tells me my comedy isn't sophisticated enough. The audience laughed, this time louder. Joy's smile stiffened. Leanne continued, still soft, still smiling. When I talk about Walmart, I'm really talking about community. When I talk about casseroles, I'm talking about how women show love. And when I talk about small-town life, I'm talking about the human experience most people actually live, not the version they see on TV. She paused just long enough for the words to land. Joy leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. That's a nice way of spinning it, she said. But your audience is mostly Middle America, right? People who vote a certain way. Believe certain things. Don't you ever feel like you're just preaching to the choir instead of challenging assumptions? Now the shift was undeniable. The studio wasn't just watching anymore. It was bracing. Leanne tilted her head, smile still intact, but something had changed behind her eyes. Joy, honey, she said, voice still warm, I've been doing comedy for 30 years. I've performed for every kind of audience you can imagine. And what I've learned is this, people are a lot more alike than they are different. She leaned in slightly. The woman in Manhattan trying to raise kids while working full-time has more in common with the woman in Tennessee doing the same thing than either of them might want to admit. My job isn't to divide people. It's to remind them we're all just trying to get through the day without losing our minds. The audience applauded. Joy's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to this, not being able to dominate the rhythm of the conversation. Not being gently outmaneuvered with kindness. And that's when the real tension began to coil. Because Joy Behar hadn't finished pushing. And Leanne Morgan hadn't even started fighting back yet. The studio lights burned on. The audience leaned forward. And somewhere between a smile and a smirk, the battle lines were quietly drawn. The applause faded, but the tension didn't. It lingered in the studio like humidity. Before a storm, thick and unmistakable. The audience had laughed, yes, but not comfortably. This wasn't light banter anymore. This was something sharper, something personal, unfolding in real time under unforgiving lights. Joy Behar sat perfectly still, her fingers curled lightly around her mug, knuckles whitening just enough to betray what her face tried to hide. She had expected deflection. Maybe a joke. Maybe nervous laughter. What she hadn't expected was resistance delivered with a smile so calm it felt almost insulting. She leaned forward again. That's very charming, Joy said, her tone cool now, stripped of humor. But let's be honest. There's a difference between being popular and being good. McDonald's is popular too, but no one's calling it fine dining. The line landed hard. A few gasps fluttered through the audience. Someone near the front inhaled sharply. Even Whoopi's expression shifted, her brows knitting as she glanced between them. For the first time, the studio went truly quiet. Leanne Morgan looked at Joy for a beat longer than before. Then she laughed. Not nervously. Not defensively. She laughed like someone genuinely amused. Joy, Leanne said, wiping the corner of her eye, did you just compare my comedy to McDonald's? She shook her head, still smiling. Honey, I've been called worse by better. My mother-in-law once told me my brisket tasted like a tire fire. And she said it right in front of Jesus and everybody at Easter dinner. The audience exploded. Laughter burst out loud and uncontrollable, rolling through the studio in waves. Joy's lips twitched, not upward. Her composure cracked just enough for the cameras to catch it. Leanne wasn't finished. You're gonna have to try harder than fast food comparisons if you want to hurt my feelings, she added gently. Joy exhaled through her nose. That's not the point, she snapped. The point is that you're pandering. You're giving people what they want to hear instead of challenging them. That's not art, that's comfort. Leanne's smile softened, but her posture changed. She sat a little straighter now, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her voice stayed warm, but there was steel underneath it. I think it's real condescending, she said, to assume that middle America doesn't deserve comedy that reflects their lives. Like their experiences are somehow less valid. She glanced briefly toward the audience, then back to Joy. I've met a lot of people who think they're smarter than everyone else, Leanne continued. And you know what they usually have in common? Joy raised an eyebrow. Do tell. They've never actually lived with the people they look down on. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Joy's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting I look down on people? Leanne tilted her head, smile beatific. Oh honey, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm a comedian, not a therapist. Laughter again, louder this time, sharper. Joy's jaw tightened visibly. But I will say this, Leanne added calmly. People who feel the need to tell everyone how sophisticated they are usually aren't as secure in that sophistication as they'd like folks to believe. The words landed like a precision-guided strike. Joy blinked once. Twice. Her voice came out clipped. You know what I find interesting? You've turned this into a folksy monologue instead of answering the question. Am I? Leanne asked gently. Or am I just not giving you the reaction you wanted? The audience leaned forward as one. Because it feels like you came into this interview expecting me to be some simple country bumpkin who'd crumble under your big city wit, Leanne said. And now that I'm not crumbling, you're getting frustrated. Joy scoffed. That's ridiculous. Is it? Leanne asked, still smiling. Or is it just uncomfortable? Whoopi shifted in her seat, sensing the escalation. Maybe we should talk about Leanne's tour, but Joy waved her off. No, I think this is worth discussing, Joy said sharply. There's a difference between being popular and being important. Some comedy actually changes the world. What does your comedy change? The question cut through the room. For the first time, Leanne didn't answer immediately. She inhaled slowly. Thoughtfully. The audience sensed it, this pause wasn't comedic timing. This was something else. Well, Leanne said softly, that's a fair question. She looked down for a moment, then back up. I got an email last week from a woman in Ohio, she began. She was going through chemotherapy. She told me the only thing that got her through those treatments was watching my specials. That I made her laugh on days she didn't think she could laugh anymore. The studio went still. I got a letter from a man in Texas whose wife had just passed away, Leanne continued. They used to watch my comedy together. Now he watches it alone because it makes him feel like she's still there, laughing with him. Joy shifted uncomfortably. Leanne's voice didn't waver. I met a young woman in Nashville who told me she was thinking about hurting herself. But she came to my show instead. She laughed. She asked for help after. She's okay now. You could hear breathing in the studio. That's what my comedy changes, Leanne said quietly. She looked directly at Joy. You want to know what's important? Those people are important. Their pain is important. And if my simple, unsophisticated comedy gives them 1 hour where they forget how hard life is, then I'd say that matters. Applause erupted, different from before. Not laughter. Not noise. Respect. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it. Leanne wasn't done. You know what I've noticed about people who think they're better than everyone else, she continued. They usually haven't done the work of actually connecting with people. They sit in towers and decide what matters, but they've never held the hand of someone crying in a meet-and-greet line because your jokes helped them survive a divorce. Joy's face flushed. I'm not trying to change the world, Leanne said softly. I'm trying to help people get through their day. And if you think that's not important, she paused. Then I feel sorry for you. The silence was deafening. Joy laughed sharply. I don't need a lecture from someone who makes jokes about menopause and minivans. Leanne smiled wider. Oh Joy, she said, delighted. You still don't get it. She leaned forward. The menopause jokes aren't about menopause. They're about women finally reaching an age where they stop caring what people like you think. And the minivan jokes? They're about the beautiful chaos of raising a family. She shook her head gently. Everything I do has meaning underneath it. You just have to be willing to see it. Joy pushed her chair back slightly. You're psychoanalyzing me, Joy snapped. No ma'am, Leanne replied. I'm just responding. The audience laughed again, harder, louder. Joy stood up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and be talked down to by someone who tells jokes about Cracker Barrel. Leanne didn't raise her voice. You don't have to do anything, she said calmly. But I will say this, Joy paused, halfway out of her seat. I've told jokes about Cracker Barrel to sold-out crowds at Madison Square Garden. A beat. Where are you performing these days, Joy? The room froze. Joy's face drained of color, then burned red. This is absurd, she snapped. You're being completely unprofessional. Leanne laughed softly. If refusing to feel bad about my success is unprofessional, she said, then I reckon I'm guilty. Joy grabbed her papers. I'm done with this, she said, voice trembling. I have better things to do. She turned away from the table. The audience gasped. The cameras rolled. And for the first time in View history, the host was the one walking off. Joy, Leanne called after her gently. Joy stopped. Turned. The studio held its breath. Leanne smiled. I just want you to know something before you go. Joy stared back, caught between fury and something else, uncertainty. And that's where everything was about to change. Joy Behar stood frozen at the edge of the table. For a long second, no one moved. Not the audience. Not the hosts. Not even the cameras, which continued to glide silently across the studio, capturing every micro-expression, every twitch of emotion that couldn't be edited out later. The studio lights felt hotter now, glaring down on a moment that had slipped far beyond the control of producers or teleprompters. This wasn't a segment anymore. This was raw, unscripted television. Leanne Morgan sat calmly in her chair, hands folded, posture relaxed, her expression open and sincere. There was no triumph in her eyes. No smugness. Just a quiet steadiness, the kind that comes from a woman who had survived too many hard rooms to be shaken by one more. I don't have any hard feelings toward you, Leanne said softly, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. I really don't. Joy scoffed under her breath, but she didn't interrupt. I've been doing this too long to take criticism personally, Leanne continued. But I do hope someday you'll understand that there's room in this world for all kinds of comedy. She paused, letting the words breathe. The kind that makes people think, she said gently. And the kind that makes people feel. Neither one is better than the other. They're just different. Joy's eyes flickered, just for a moment. And I hope someday you'll stop by one of my shows, Leanne added, smiling that familiar, disarming smile. I think you might be surprised by what you find. The audience remained silent, hanging on every syllable. We're not as simple as you think we are, Leanne said. We just don't feel the need to prove how smart we are all the time. She tilted her head slightly. That's a Southern thing. We call it grace. The word landed heavier than any insult could have. Grace. Joy's mouth opened as if to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time since the interview began, she looked unsure. Then, without another word, Joy turned and walked off the set. Her heels echoed sharply against the studio floor, the sound cutting through the silence like a closing door. A camera instinctively followed her for a step before stopping, unsure whether it was witnessing history or a mistake that would never air. The audience didn't applaud. They didn't laugh. They simply stared. Whoopi Goldberg blinked, then exhaled slowly, visibly searching for words she'd never expected to need on her own show. Well, she said at last, her voice low, that was unexpected. Leanne shrugged lightly, almost apologetically. My mama always said, she replied, never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the crowd. I'm not calling Joy a pig, Leanne added quickly, smiling. That would be rude. The laughter grew warmer now. I'm just saying, Leanne continued, sometimes the best way to win a fight is to refuse to fight at all. Just smile, be kind, and let the other person tell you who they are. She turned toward the audience, her gaze sweeping across rows of faces, young, old, city, small town, people who felt seen in that moment. Y'all have been so wonderful, she said. This is exactly why I love what I do. Because no matter what anybody says, laughter brings people together. Her voice softened. And I'd rather bring people together with simple jokes about everyday life than tear them apart with sophisticated contempt. The audience rose to their feet. Not all at once, but slowly, organically, like a wave building strength as it moved. Applause thundered through the studio, louder and more sustained than anything earlier in the show. Leanne stood, visibly moved now, placing a hand over her heart. Thank you, she said quietly. Truly. She turned to the camera for the first time since the confrontation began, looking straight into the lens as if speaking to millions of people at home who had leaned forward on their couches without realizing it. To everyone watching, Leanne said, thank you for supporting me all these years. I'll be on tour all year, and I'd love to see you there. We'll laugh together. Maybe cry a little. And remember that no matter what's going on in the world, she smiled. We're all just people trying to do our best. The applause swelled again. When the cameras finally cut, the studio buzzed with disbelief. Crew members exchanged looks. Producers whispered urgently. No one needed to ask what had just happened, they felt it in their bones. Within minutes, clips began spreading. Within hours, the internet caught fire. Headlines followed. Comment sections exploded. Millions of people who had never heard of Leanne Morgan before watched the footage and immediately understood why she had connected with so many hearts. And Joy Behar. She became something no veteran host ever wants to be. A moment. The first few host to walk off her own show, not because a guest lost control, but because a guest refused to be bullied. But the real impact wasn't about winners or losers. It was about something deeper. The conversation that followed wasn't just about comedy. It was about class. About respect. About the quiet arrogance that mistakes loudness for intelligence and kindness for weakness. Leanne Morgan had proven something rare on modern television. That you don't have to be cruel to be clever. That you don't have to belittle others to elevate yourself. And that sometimes, the sharpest response isn't an insult, but empathy delivered with perfect timing. Sophistication, she showed the world, isn't about accents or zip codes or where you shop. It's about how you treat people, especially when the cameras are rolling and the whole world is watching. And that morning, under hot studio lights, a woman from small-town Tennessee reminded everyone of something we seem to forget far too often. Grace is power. If this story made you think, made you laugh, or made you see things differently, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more cinematic stories that pull back the curtain on moments television never expected to lose control of. And don't forget to share this with someone who believes kindness is still the strongest comeback of all.